Commander Jake Morrison sat in the shuttle as it flew back to the stellar dawn. His mind raced with everything he had seen and learned. Earth wasn't just inhabited by humans. It had become something completely new. A living planet with 2 billion. People sharing one massive consciousness. Admiral Kethfer waited on the bridge when they returned. His blue skin had faded to a lighter shade, but his large black eyes still burned with anger and confusion. "Well?" he demanded. "What did you learn?" Jake looked at Dr. Elena Rodriguez and Captain Liu Wei. Both humans seemed as shocked as he felt. How could they explain that their own species had evolved beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen? "Admiral," Jake said carefully, "the situation is more complex than we thought." "Complex?" Kethfer snapped. "They have weapons. We have weapons. They refuse to surrender. We destroy them. It's simple." Dr. Elena stepped forward. "Sir, it's not that simple. The humans on Earth have developed technology that makes our weapons useless. They can disable our entire fleet without firing a shot. More importantly," Liu added, "they've been watching the Alliance for centuries. They know everything about our military capabilities, our political structure, our expansion plans." Kethfer's skin darkened again. "Impossible. Earth has been cut off from galactic civilization for 300 years. Jake took a deep breath. "No, Admiral, it hasn't." Before Kethfer could respond, the communication system activated. Mayor Sullivan's voice filled the bridge. "Commander Morrison, we need to speak with you privately. There's something else you need to know." Jake looked at the Admiral, who waved him toward the communication station with disgust. "This is Commander Morrison." "Jake," Mayor Sullivan's voice became warmer, more personal. "I'm about to tell you something that will change everything." "Captain Liu, Dr. Rodriguez, I need you to hear this too." Elena and Liu moved closer to the communication panel. "The humans who left Earth during the Great Exodus," Mayor Sullivan continued, "they didn't lose contact with us. We've been working together for 3 centuries. Jake felt the deck shift under his feet. "What do you mean?" "Every human colony, every human serving in Alliance forces, every human scientist in the galaxy, they're all part of our network. They've been sending U.S. information about Alliance expansion, technology, and military plans." Liu's face went white. "That's impossible. I would have known." "Would you?" Dr. Carter's voice joined the transmission. "Liu, do you remember the dreams you had as a child? The ones about green forests and blue oceans?" Liu staggered backward. "How could you know about those?" "Because they weren't dreams. They were memories. Genetic memories passed down through quantum neural pathways that we've been developing for centuries." Elena grabbed Jake's arm. "Commander, my scanner is picking up quantum field activity from Liu and myself. It's the same signature I detected on Earth's surface." Dr. Carter's voice continued. "Every human born in the last 3 centuries carries dormant connections to Earth's planetary consciousness. Most never activate them, but some do, especially when they get close to their home world." Jake stared at Liu and Elena. "Are you saying they're connected to Earth's hive mind?" "Not a hive mind," Mayor Sullivan corrected. "A family mind. Jake, Elena, Liu, every human in the galaxy is part of the same extended family. We've just been separated for a while." Admiral Kethfer pushed Jake away from the communication panel. "Lies and tricks. Even if this were true, it changes nothing. The Alliance will not be stopped by human fantasies." "Admiral," General Torres' voice cut through the bridge like a blade, "you should check your long-range sensors." The tactical officer ran a deep space scan. His face went pale as the results appeared on screen. "Admiral," he reported, "I'm detecting massive fleet movements throughout Alliance space. Human colonies are declaring independence. Human crew members on Alliance ships are taking control of their vessels. Jake watched the reports flood in. Every human world, every human settlement, every human serving in alliance forces was acting at the same time. It wasn't a rebellion. It was a coordinated awakening. How is this possible? Kethver whispered. Because, Mayor Sullivan explained, when you threatened Earth, you didn't just threaten one world. You threatened every human in the galaxy. Our quantum consciousness network spans the entire galactic arm. We've been building it for 300 years. Elena checked her readings again. Commander, I'm detecting quantum transmissions between Earth and every human colony within 50 light years. They're all connected. The Alliance expansion has helped us more than you know, Dr. Carter added. Every time you moved humans to new worlds, you helped us spread our network. Every human ship in your fleet carries part of our consciousness. Liu suddenly straightened up. His eyes seemed to glow with inner light. Jake, I can feel them. All of them. Every human in the galaxy. We're not alone anymore. Elena gasped as the same change came over her. It's incredible. I can sense thoughts and feelings from billions of people. We're all connected. Jake felt something stirring in his own mind. Distant voices, warm presences, a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. Admiral Kethver backed away from the humans on his bridge. What are you doing to them? Nothing, Mayor Sullivan replied. We're simply reminding them who they really are. Jake looked at the tactical display. Red warnings flashed across Alliance space as human forces took control of ships, bases, and colonies. In a single coordinated action, humanity had just removed itself from Alliance control. This is war, Kethvar declared. No, General Torres said firmly. This is freedom. The Alliance can keep its non-human territory, but humanity is going home. Jake felt the full weight of what was happening. Earth hadn't just survived the Alliance's attempt at conquest. It had triggered a galactic revolution that would free every human in the galaxy. What happens now? Jake asked. Now, Mayor Sullivan said, you have a choice. Return to Alliance space and report that Earth is under human protection. Or stay here and help us build something better than the old empire of conquest and exploitation. Jake looked around the bridge. Elena and Liu were smiling with joy as they experienced their connection to the planetary consciousness. Even Admiral Kethver seemed to understand that his old world had just ended. Admiral, Jake said quietly, I recommend we accept their terms. For the first time since landing on Earth, Kethver's skin returned to its normal blue color. He was no longer angry. He was simply tired. Do what you want, he said. The Alliance as we knew it is finished. Jake activated the communication system one last time. Mayor Sullivan, this is Commander Morrison. On behalf of the human crew of this ship, we accept your offer. As Jake spoke, he felt his mind opening to the vast network of human consciousness that spanned the galaxy. For the first time in his life, he truly understood what it meant to be human. Earth had not just survived. It had shown the galaxy that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that unity was more powerful than empire, and that humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to grow beyond what anyone thought possible. The void parasites grew stronger with each passing hour. Jake watched through his laboratory window as more of the creatures attached themselves to the ship's hull. Their bioluminescent pulses grew brighter as they fed on the New Horizons energy. Systems. The ship's lights dimmed further, and the air recycling systems began to stutter in the main conference room. Panic was setting in among the alien crew. Jake could hear raised voices echoing through the corridors as different species argued about the best course of action. The Crothery wanted to use their plasma cannons to burn the creatures off the hull. The Veltar suggested using electromagnetic pulses to disrupt their nervous systems. The Zephyrians proposed creating a force field to push them away. None of their solutions were working. The creatures adapted to each new attack with frightening speed. When the Kratheri fired their weapons, the parasites simply shifted their feeding positions to areas the cannons could not reach. When the Veltar tried electromagnetic attacks, the creatures changed their bioelectric frequencies to avoid disruption. When the Zephyrians attempted to use force fields, the parasites somehow phased through the energy barriers. Jake made his way to the conference room, carrying his scanner and a datapad filled with observations. The alien officers barely noticed him as he slipped inside and took a seat near the back. Commander Velkith was speaking, his massive fists clenched in frustration. "These creatures are more cunning than we anticipated," the Kratheri leader growled. "They learn from our attacks and counter them immediately. We need more firepower." "Firepower is not the solution." Dr. Xylo clicked her mandibles in disagreement. "We need to understand their biology first. Perhaps a targeted virus or toxin would be more effective." Captain Morpheus glowed a deep red, indicating his stress levels were climbing. "Time is running short. Our power reserves are down to 60%. If these creatures continue feeding at this rate, we will lose life support within 12 hours. Jake raised his hand tentatively. The motion was so small and hesitant that most of the room did not notice. Only Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's human medical officer, saw him and cleared her throat loudly. "The human has something to say," Elena announced, her voice cutting through the arguing voices. All eyes turned to Jake. He felt his stomach twist with nervousness as dozens of alien faces stared at him. Commander Velkith's expression showed clear annoyance at the interruption. "Well?" Captain Morpheus asked, his crystalline form shifting to an impatient yellow. "What is it, human?" Jake stood up slowly, his datapad trembling slightly in his hands. "I have been studying the creature's behavior patterns. I do not think they are actually parasites." The room erupted in scoffs and dismissive sounds. Security Chief Grondal's shell rattled with what might have been laughter. "Of course. They are parasites, soft one. They are feeding on our ship's energy. What else would you call them?" "I think they might be juveniles," Jake continued, his voice gaining strength despite the mockery. "The bioelectric patterns they are using to communicate are too complex for simple parasites. They remind me of migration signals." Dr. Xylo waved, one of her 4 arms dismissively. "Migration signals?" "These creatures attached themselves to our hull and began draining our power immediately. That is parasitic behavior, not migration. But look at the pattern of their feeding." Jake activated his datapad and projected a holographic display showing the creatures' positions on the hull. They are not feeding randomly. They are taking energy in specific amounts and locations. It looks like they are trying to build up power for something. "For reproduction, obviously," Commander Velkith rumbled. "They plan to lay eggs throughout our ship. We should space them all before they can spread further." Jake shook his head. "No, sir. I think they are trying to metamorphose. These readings suggest they are in a larval stage. They need energy to transform into their adult forms." The alien officers exchanged glances that clearly said they thought the human had lost his mind. Captain Morpheus's glow shifted to a patronizing blue. "Even if your theory were correct, human, it changes nothing. They are still draining our power and threatening our mission. Violence is the only language predators understand. But what if we could redirect them?" Jake pressed on, ignoring the growing impatience in the room. "If these are juveniles following an ancient migration route, maybe we could guide them to where they actually want to go." Security Chief Grondal stood up to his full 9-foot height, his armored form casting a shadow over Jake. "Enough of this foolishness. These creatures are enemies. We destroy enemies. That is how the universe works. The small human's theories are entertaining, Dr. Xylo added. But we do not have time for such fantasies. We need practical solutions, not wishful thinking. Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he refused to back down. Give me 6 hours. Let me try to establish communication with them. If I am wrong, you can blast them off the hull. The room fell silent, except for the sound of the ship's struggling systems. Captain Morpheus studied Jake for a long moment, his crystalline face unreadable. 6 hours, the captain finally said. But you will work alone. We cannot spare personnel for this experiment. And if your approach fails, we proceed with full military action. Jake nodded gratefully and hurried back to his laboratory. Elena followed him out of the conference room, catching up with him in the corridor. You know they expect you to fail, she said quietly. They think you are wasting time that could be spent on real solutions. Maybe I am, Jake admitted, calling up star charts on his computer, but I have to try. These creatures are intelligent. I can feel it. They are not mindless parasites. Elena watched him work, calculating stellar drift patterns and comparing them to the creature's bioelectric signals. What do you need from me? Help me map the original migration routes in this sector, Jake said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. If I am right, these juveniles are lost. Their instincts are telling them to follow paths that no longer exist because of stellar drift over thousands of years. For the next 6 hours, Jake worked frantically to decode the creatures' communication patterns. He compared their signals to known animal migration behaviors from dozens of worlds. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The creatures were not attacking the ship at all. They were trying to use its energy to reach a specific destination, a nebula, that had shifted position over millennia. As the deadline approached, Jake made his final calculations. He programmed the ship's communication array to broadcast a series of bioelectric pulses, essentially creating a false trail that would lead the creatures away from the ship toward their actual destination. The results were immediate and dramatic. The creatures stopped feeding and began detaching from the hull one by one. They formed a loose formation and moved away from the ship, following Jake's artificial signals toward the distant nebula where they could complete their transformation safely. The ship's power systems immediately began returning to normal. Throughout the new horizon, lights brightened and air systems resumed their steady humming. Jake had done the impossible. He had solved the crisis without firing a single shot. When he returned to the conference room to report his success, the alien officers sat in stunned silence. They had been prepared to dismiss his efforts as the desperate attempts of an inferior species. Instead, they had witnessed something they could not explain or understand. Commander Velkith was the first to speak, his voice unusually quiet. The creatures are gone. All of them. How did you accomplish this? Jake explained his theory about migration routes and stellar drift. He showed them the communication patterns he had decoded and the artificial signals he had used to redirect the juveniles. The alien officers listened without interruption, their expressions ranging from confusion to grudging respect. Remarkable, Captain Morpheus finally said, his glow shifting to a thoughtful purple. Though I admit I do not fully understand your methods. Dr. Xylo's mandibles clicked slowly. Perhaps we underestimated human capabilities. This was indeed an elegant solution. Jake felt a small surge of pride, but he knew this was just the beginning. The void sector held many more dangers, and his alien colleagues still saw him as a weak link in their expedition. He had proven himself once, but he would need to do it again and again to earn their true respect. As the ship resumed its course toward the heart of the void sector, Jake returned to his laboratory with a new sense of purpose. Elena stopped by to congratulate him on his success. They are starting to see you differently, she observed. Not much, but it is a start. Jake nodded, watching the stars through his window. Somewhere out there in the darkness, greater challenges waited. And somewhere among those challenges, he sensed, was something that would change everything. 3 weeks passed since Jake had redirected the void parasites. The alien crew still treated him with polite distance, but the open mockery had stopped. They acknowledged his success with the creatures, though most attributed it to luck, rather, and skill. Jake did not mind. He was too busy studying the strange mark on his left arm. The mark had appeared 2 days after the parasite incident. It looked like a tattoo made of living light, visible only under certain conditions. When the ship passed through areas of high cosmic radiation, the mark would glow with soft blue patterns. Jake had run every medical scan available, but the mark showed no signs of being harmful. It simply existed, pulsing gently with his heartbeat. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had examined it dozens of times, but her equipment could not explain what it was or how it had gotten there. The mark seemed to be made of some kind of bioluminescent compound that had somehow bonded with Jake's skin at the cellular level. It might be some kind of reaction to the void parasites, Elena suggested during one of their evening conversations in the medical bay. Maybe exposure to their bioelectric fields caused a mutation. Jake traced the intricate patterns with his finger. They reminded him of circuit boards, but organic ones that seemed to shift and change when he was not looking directly at them. It does not hurt. Actually, it feels kind of warm when it glows. The ship was now entering the Maelstrom Nebula, a region of space known for its violent storms and dangerous wildlife. Captain Morpheus had warned the crew that this would be the most hazardous part of their journey. Ships that entered the nebula rarely emerged unchanged, and some never emerged at all. Jake was in his laboratory when the first attack came. Alarms shrieked throughout the ship as something struck the hull with tremendous force. The lights flickered, and Jake had to grab his workbench to keep from falling as the entire vessel shuddered. "All hands to battle stations," Captain Morpheus announced over the intercom. "We are under attack by unknown hostiles." Jake made his way to the nearest observation port and peered out into space. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Sleek, predatory shapes moved through the nebula's swirling gases like sharks through water. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, their dark hulls gleaming with biomechanical armor. The creatures were attacking the ship in coordinated strikes, peering out of nowhere to rake the hull with claws that could cut through metal. Then they would vanish back into the nebula before the ship's weapons could lock onto them. "Void stalkers," Jake whispered, recognizing the creatures from his xenobiology databases. These were legendary predators that hunted in packs through the deepest regions of space. They were intelligent, adaptable, and absolutely ruthless. In the command center, the alien officers were struggling to mount an effective defense. The stalkers. Hit-and-run tactics made them nearly impossible to target. They would phase into normal space long enough to strike, then disappear again before anyone could react. "Increase shield power to the port sections," Commander Velkith ordered, his massive frame hunched over the tactical display. "They are concentrating their attacks there." "Shields are already at maximum," Dr. Xylo reported, her 4 arms working frantically at her station. "These creatures are cutting through our defenses like they are made of paper." Jake watched the battle unfold from his laboratory, feeling helpless. The stalkers moved with a fluid grace that reminded him of dolphins. But there was nothing playful about their assault. They were systematically dismantling the ship's outer hull, creating dozens of small breaches that were slowly bleeding the vessel's atmosphere into space. Then something strange happened. One of the stalkers phased into normal space near Jake's observation port and stopped. Instead of attacking, it hovered there, its glowing eyes fixed on him through the transparisteel. Jake found himself staring back at the creature, mesmerized by its alien beauty. The mark on his arm began to glow. At first, Jake thought it was just responding to the nebula's radiation, but the light grew stronger and more focused. The stalker outside seemed to notice it too. Its aggressive posture shifted to something that looked almost like curiosity. Jake made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone watching. He pressed his marked arm against the window, making the glowing patterns clearly visible to the creature outside. The stalker moved closer, its sleek head tilting as it studied the mark. For a moment, predator and human regarded each other through the barrier of metal and glass. Then the stalker did something unexpected. It pressed one of its clawed appendages against the outside of the window, directly opposite Jake's mark. The touch was almost gentle, nothing like the violent attacks it had been making moments before. The creature's eyes seemed to widen with what Jake could only interpret as recognition. Bennett pulled back and made a series of rapid gestures with its limbs. Jake had seen similar behavior in Earth's great apes and marine mammals. The stalker was trying to communicate. Jake grabbed his portable scanner and began recording the creature's movements. The patterns were complex and deliberate, clearly a form of language. As he watched, more stalkers appeared around his window, all of them making similar gestures. "Jake, get away from there." Alana's voice crackled over his communicator. "Those things are trying to break through the hull." But Jake could see they were not trying to break anything. They were talking to him, and somehow his mark was allowing him to understand at least part of what they were saying. The patterns in his arm pulsed in rhythm with the creature's movements, as if translating their alien language into something his human brain could process. The meaning came to him gradually, like solving a complex puzzle. As stalkers were not attacking randomly. They were responding to a territorial threat, defending their hunting grounds from what they perceived as invaders. But Jake's mark identified him as something different, something they recognized and respected. Jake activated his communicator and called the bridge. "Captain Morpheus, I need to speak with you immediately." "Not now, human." The captain's voice was strained with stress. "We are fighting for our lives." "The stalkers are not trying to destroy us," Jake said urgently. "They are protecting their territory. But I think I can communicate with them." The line went silent for a moment. Then Captain Morpheus responded, his tone skeptical but desperate. "Explain quickly." Jake looked out at the stalkers surrounding his window. They had stopped their attack and were waiting, as if they knew he was trying to establish contact with his own people. "The mark on my arm is some kind of recognition symbol. These creatures know what it means. If you give me access to the ship's external communication systems, I think I can negotiate with them." "That is madness." Commander Valkith's voice broke into the conversation. "These are predators, not diplomats." But Captain Morpheus was running out of options. The ship's defenses were failing, and conventional weapons were useless against the stalker's tactics. "Very well, human. You have 5 minutes to attempt communication. If you fail, we will try a full nuclear bombardment." Jake hurried to the communication center, his heart pounding with excitement and terror. The stalkers had given him a chance to prove himself, but one wrong move could doom everyone aboard the ship. He activated the external communication array and began transmitting the same gestural patterns he had observed from the stalkers. Using his mark as a reference point, he tried to convey the concept of peaceful passage through their territory. The response was immediate. The attacks stopped completely, and the stalkers formed a protective formation around the ship. Their pack leader, larger and more ornate than the others, approached the main communications array and began transmitting complex acoustic signals. Jake's mark flared with bright light as it translated the alien language. The message was clear. The stalkers would escort the ship safely through their territory, but only because they recognized Jake as being under the protection of something they called the Great Hunter. As the pack of void stalkers guided the new horizon through the treacherous nebula, Jake realized that his life had changed forever. The mark on his arm was more than just a curiosity. It was a passport to a hidden world of cosmic predators, creatures that ruled the spaces between stars. The alien crew watched in stunned silence as their former enemies became their protectors. For the first time since joining the mission, Jake felt like he truly belonged among the stars. But he also sensed that this was only the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous than anyone could imagine. 3 months had passed since the Void Stalker encounter. Jake's reputation aboard the New Horizon had improved considerably, though many crew members still struggled to understand what had happened. The alien officers treated him with cautious respect now, but Jake could see the questions in their eyes. How had a small human managed to communicate with creatures that had baffled xenobiologists for centuries? Jake spent most of his time studying the mark on his arm and documenting every interaction he had witnessed between different void creatures. The mark had grown more complex over the weeks, developing new patterns that seemed to shift based on his location and the cosmic radiation levels around the ship. Elena continued to monitor his health, but all her scans showed he was perfectly normal, except for the strange bioluminescent tattoo. The ship was now deep in the heart of the Maelstrom Nebula, following ancient star charts toward a region where several research vessels had vanished over the past decade. Captain Morpheus had chosen this route because the missing ships had all been studying the same phenomenon, gravitational anomalies that suggested the presence of something massive moving through the nebula. Jake was in the observation lounge when the gravitational alarms began sounding. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the nebula's gases swirling in patterns that defied physics. Something enormous was disturbing the very fabric of space around them. "All crew to emergency stations," Captain Morpheus announced over the intercom. "We are detecting massive gravitational disturbances ahead. Prepare for possible contact with unknown entities." Jake made his way to the bridge, where the alien officers were staring at their sensor displays in disbelief. The readings showed something impossible. An object over 3 miles long moving through space with the grace and purpose of a living creature. Long-range sensors confirmed the target, Dr. Xylo reported, her forearms trembling slightly as she worked her controls. "It matches no known vessel configuration. The energy signatures suggest biological origin, but the size is beyond anything in our databases." Commander Velkith's shell rattled with nervous energy. Could it be a space whale? Some species grow to enormous sizes. No space whale has ever been recorded at this scale, Captain Morpheus replied, his crystalline form cycling through rapid color changes. "And look at those surface features. That is not natural evolution." Jake studied the long-range images, appearing on the main screen. The creature was magnificent and terrifying. Its hull gleamed with what looked like living metal, and dozens of sensory appendages extended from its body like cosmic tentacles. Biomechanical structures covered its surface, suggesting intelligence far beyond anything they had encountered. "Captain," the navigation officer called out, his voice tight with fear. "The object is changing course. It is heading directly toward us." The bridge fell silent except for the sound of rapidly beating hearts and the ship's straining engines. Jake felt the mark on his arm begin to warm, then glow with increasing intensity. The patterns shifted and changed, becoming more complex than he had ever seen them. "We should retreat immediately," Security Chief Grongal suggested, his massive hands moving toward the weapon controls. "This creature could destroy us without effort." "Our faster-than-light drive is not responding," the chief engineer reported. "Something is interfering with our propulsion systems." Captain Morpheus's glow shifted to a deep red, indicating extreme stress. "Then we face whatever comes. All weapons to maximum power. Prepare for defensive action." Jake watched the approaching Leviathan with growing amazement rather than fear. The creature moved with purpose and intelligence, its path calculated and deliberate. This was not the random movement of a mindless beast. This was the approach of a thinking being. "Captain," Jake said quietly, "I request permission to attempt communication." The entire bridge crew turned to stare at him. Commander Velkith's expression showed clear disbelief. Communication? That thing could swallow our entire ship. "This is not the time for your experiments, human." But Jake's mark was now glowing. So brightly, it was visible through his jumpsuit. The patterns pulsed in rhythm with something he could feel, but not yet understand. "It is not attacking us. Look at its approach vector. If it wanted to destroy the ship, it would have done so already." Captain Morpheus studied the tactical display, his crystalline features reflecting the light from Jake's mark. "The human may be correct. The creature's movements suggest curiosity rather than aggression. Curiosity or not, we should be prepared for the worst," Dr. Xylo added, her mandibles clicking nervously. "One wrong move from that thing, and we will all be space dust." Jake moved to the communication station without waiting for permission. The mark on his arm was now pulsing so rapidly it looked like a strobe light. He activated the ship's most powerful transmitters and began broadcasting the same patterns his mark was displaying. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Leviathan's approach slowed, and it began transmitting complex harmonic frequencies that resonated through the ship's hull. Jake's mark translated the signals into something his human brain could understand, though the meaning was so vast and ancient it made his head spin. "It is trying to communicate," Jake announced, his voice filled with wonder. "These signals are not random. They are mathematical sequences, harmonic progressions, even what looks like star charts." The alien officers gathered around the communication station, watching in fascination as Jake worked to decode the creature's transmissions. The complexity of the language was staggering, suggesting intelligence that had been developing for millions of years. "What is it saying?" Captain Morpheus asked, his glow shifting to an intense blue dot. Jake closed his eyes and let the mark guide his understanding. Images flashed through his mind, star systems being born and dying, migrations across galactic distances, and something else, something that made his heart race with recognition. "It is looking for its children," Jake said softly. "The void parasites we encountered 3 months ago. It wants to know if they are safe." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The tiny creatures that had attached to their ship were the offspring of this cosmic giant. Jake's successful communication with the juveniles had been noticed by their parent, and now the Leviathan had come to investigate. Jake continued transmitting, using his mark to translate his intentions into the creature's ancient language. He explained how he had helped guide the young parasites to their proper destination, how he had recognized their migration patterns and aided their journey to the nebula, where they could complete their transformation. The Leviathan's response was a sound like singing planets, harmonies that spoke of gratitude and recognition. Through his mark, Jake felt the creature's approval washing over him like warm sunlight. Then something incredible happened. The Leviathan extended one of its massive sensory appendages toward the ship. The appendage was larger than the new horizon itself, but it moved with delicate precision. It touched the ship's hull with gentle care, and Jake felt a tingling sensation run through his entire body. The mark on his arm flared with brilliant light, and new patterns began forming across his skin. The Leviathan was marking him, adding its own recognition symbols to those already present. Jake realized he was being inducted into something ancient and powerful, a network of cosmic predators that had existed since the galaxy was young. When the marking was complete, the Leviathan pulled back and began transmitting a final sequence of harmonics. Jake's enhanced mark translated the message clearly. He was now recognized as a friend to the children of the void, a protector worthy of respect from the greatest hunters in space that the massive creature turned away from the ship and began moving deeper into the nebula. Its biomechanical hull gleamed one final time in the distant starlight, and then it vanished into the cosmic darkness like a living shadow. Jake collapsed into a nearby chair, exhausted by the intensity of the encounter. The mark on his arm had settled into new configurations, more intricate and beautiful than before. Elena rushed to his side with her medical scanner, but Jake waved her away. "I am fine," he assured her, though his voice was shaky with emotion. "Better than fine, actually. I think I finally understand what this mark means." Captain Morpheus approached slowly, his crystalline form glowing with what Jake had learned to recognize as deep respect. "What just happened here, human? What did that creature do to you?" Jake looked at the alien officers surrounding him, these beings who had once mocked his small stature and weak appearance. Now they watched him with something approaching awe, finally beginning to understand that strength came in many forms. "It recognized me as family," Jake said simply. "The Leviathan marked me as one of its own. I am no longer just a human observer on this mission. I am something new, something that can bridge the gap between civilization and the wild predators that rule the spaces between stars." The alien crew exchanged glances, processing the implications of what they had witnessed. Their small human colleague had just been claimed by one of the most powerful creatures in the galaxy. The dynamics aboard the New Horizon would never be the same. 6 weeks after the Leviathan encounter, Jake had become the most respected crew member aboard the New Horizon. Scientists from 12 different species regularly consulted him about void creature behavior. The mark on his arm had evolved into an intricate network of bioluminescent patterns that seemed to catalog every dangerous species they encountered in deep space. Jake stood in his laboratory, studying reports from across the galaxy. Word of his ability to communicate with cosmic predators had spread through scientific channels. Research stations were requesting his assistance with creature problems that had puzzled experts for decades. Military commanders wanted to understand how he could turn apex predators into allies. Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered the lab carrying a steaming cup of coffee and a concerned expression. "Jake, you need to see the latest sensor readings. We are approaching something that makes the Leviathan look small." Jake followed Elena to the main sensor array. The readings showed a massive disturbance ahead, spanning several light years across. Energy signatures indicated the presence of hundreds, possibly thousands of different life forms. But these were not random encounters. The creatures were moving in coordinated patterns, as if responding to some kind of signal. "It looks like a migration gathering," Jake observed, his mark beginning to pulse with anticipation. Different species coming together for some shared purpose. Captain Morpheus materialized beside them, his crystalline form cycling through worried colors. "Our long-range scanners detect a massive space storm forming in that region. The gravitational forces alone could tear our ship apart. We should alter course immediately." "Wait," Jake said, studying the data more carefully. "Look at how the creatures are positioning themselves. They are not fleeing from the storm. They are preparing to use it somehow." Commander Velkith joined the group, his heavy footsteps announcing his arrival. "The human may be correct. Our tactical analysis suggests the creatures are forming some kind of protective formation around smaller vessels in the center of the gathering." Jake felt his mark growing warmer as understanding dawned. There are ships trapped in there, civilian vessels caught in the storm's formation. The predators are trying to protect them. The alien officers exchanged incredulous glances. The idea that cosmic predators would risk themselves to save other species contradicted everything they thought they knew about void creature behavior. "That is impossible," Dr. Xylo stated, her forearms gesturing in disbelief. "Void predators do not engage in rescue operations. They hunt and feed, Nothing more. But Jake's mark was now glowing so brightly, it cast shadows on the walls. The patterns were more complex than he had ever seen, displaying information about storm dynamics and creature behavior that seemed to come from sources beyond his own knowledge. "Captain," Jake said urgently, "we need to join that gathering. Those creatures are not just protecting random ships. They are following some kind of ancient protocol, a code that requires them to safeguard anyone caught in cosmic disasters." Captain Morpheus's glow shifted to deep purple, indicating serious consideration. "Even if your theory is correct, approaching that storm would be suicide. Our shields cannot withstand those energy levels." "They do not need to," Jake replied, with growing confidence. "If I am right about the protection protocol, the predators will shield us from the storm. But we have to help with the rescue operation. That is the price of their protection." Security Chief Grondal's shell rattled with nervous energy. "You are asking us to trust our lives to creatures that could destroy us without effort. This is madness." Jake looked around at the alien faces surrounding him. These beings had traveled across the galaxy, seeking knowledge about the universe's most dangerous regions. Now they had a chance to witness something unprecedented: cooperation between species that had never been observed working together. "Give me command of the communication systems," Jake requested. "Let me announce our intentions to the gathering. If they accept us, we participate in the rescue. If they reject us, we retreat immediately." Captain Morpheus considered the proposal for several long moments. Finally, his glow settled into a determined blue. "Very well. But at the first sign of hostility, we withdraw at maximum speed." Jake made his way to the bridge and activated the ship's most powerful transmitters. The mark on his arm blazed with light as he began broadcasting his identity and intentions to the massive gathering of predators ahead. The response came immediately from dozens of different sources: void stalkers, plasma eels, crystal spiders, and creatures Jake had never seen before all acknowledged his transmission. But the most impressive response came from the Leviathan itself, its massive form visible at the center of the protective formation. The ancient creature welcomed Jake as a recognized ally and transmitted coordinates for the new horizon to take. Position in the rescue formation dot as the ship moved into the storm. Jake watched in amazement as hundreds of cosmic predators worked together with precision that would make any military commander envious. Void stalkers used their phasing abilities to reach trapped vessels in unstable space pockets. Plasma eels provided energy shields that protected smaller ships from the storm's electrical discharges. Crystal spiders spun energy webs that stabilized the most damaged vessels. The new horizon was assigned to escort a group of refugee ships toward the edge of the storm. Jake coordinated with the Predator escorts, his mark translating their communications into tactical information the alien crew could understand. For the first time since joining the mission, Jake felt like he was exactly where he belonged. "Incredible," Dr. Zylo whispered as she watched the rescue operation unfold. "These creatures are demonstrating intelligence and cooperation levels that exceed most civilized species." Commander Velkith nodded slowly, his massive frame dwarfed by the scope of what they were witnessing. "The human has opened our eyes to something we never imagined. These predators follow codes of honor that put our own societies to shame." The rescue operation continued for 18 hours. When the last trapped vessel had been safely escorted from the storm, the gathering began to disperse. But before leaving, the Leviathan approached the new horizon one final time. Jake felt the ancient creature's consciousness touch his mind through the mark. Images flashed through his awareness: Earth's location in the galactic map, human colonies spreading across nearby star systems, and something that made his heart race with excitement. The Leviathan was extending an invitation for humanity to join the network of species protected by the cosmic predators. "What is it telling you?" Captain?" Morpheus asked, noticing Jake's intense concentration. "It is offering humanity membership in something called the Deep Hunters Alliance," Jake explained, his voice filled with wonder. "An ancient organization that maintains order in the spaces between civilized worlds. They want humans to serve as ambassadors between the Alliance and the galactic community." Elena placed a supportive hand on Jake's shoulder. "That sounds like a tremendous responsibility." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. "It is, but it is also an incredible opportunity. Humans would become the bridge between two different kinds of civilization. We could help prevent conflicts and misunderstandings that have persisted for millions of years." Over the following days, Jake worked with the ship's communication systems to transmit detailed reports back to Earth and the major alien governments. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every major species wanted to establish formal contact with the Deep Hunters Alliance through human intermediaries. When the New Horizon finally returned to civilized space, Jake found himself at the center of a diplomatic revolution. The Galactic Council offered him a position as the first Apex Predator liaison, with resources to establish a new department dedicated to void creature relations. Commander Vel Kith, who had once called Jake a soft pink weakling, now requested permission to serve under his command. Dr. Xylo submitted a formal application to study human neural patterns, hoping to understand how their species could communicate with creatures that baffled other civilizations. Captain Morpheus stood with Jake on the observation deck as they approached the space station that would become headquarters for the new Apex Predator Relations Division. "You have accomplished something remarkable, human. You have changed how the galaxy views both your species and the creatures we once feared." Jake watched the stars through the reinforced windows, his mark pulsing gently in rhythm with his heartbeat. Somewhere out there in the cosmic darkness, the Leviathan and its allies continued their ancient watch over the spaces between worlds. And now, for the first time in galactic history, they had partners who could help them protect the travelers who dared to venture into the void. "This is just the beginning," Jake said quietly. "Humanity has found its place among the stars, and it is bigger than any of us ever imagined." The small human who had once been mocked for his weakness had become the bridge between civilization and the wild. In earning the respect of the galaxy's apex predators, he had also earned something far more valuable: a future where humans would be known not for their size or strength, but for their unique ability to find common ground with any life form. No matter how alien or dangerous. As the New Horizon docked with the space station, Jake Murphy prepared to begin the next chapter of his life as humanity's fur.